Blizzard recently announced their upcoming announcement at Gamescom. They'll be unveiling the next World of Warcraft expansion for everyone to see. This event is scheduled to happen on August 6, 2015, a little less than a week from today. I wasn't planning on addressing this issue so early, but I was asked my thoughts on the whole ordeal, so what the hell, I guess I'll talk about it now. Just a fair bit of warning though, this episode is going to be more like a straight podcast style episode. I'm not bothering with any visuals this week because I'm currently in the midst of revamping my YouTube channel. I have to relaunch the show with a new title, change the channel artwork, and so on. It's a nightmare. I'm not exactly sure when I'll be up and running again full force. Anyway, am I excited about the new expansion? Well, no, of course not. I'm not playing the game anymore, so why would I be? I'm certainly curious to learn where WoW is headed, but only from an outsider's point of view. I'm also interested to see the whole thing unfold from a marketing perspective. It'll be downright comical to watch Blizzard employees slip back into sales mode, to plaster on some phony smiles and hype a new expansion while prematurely abandoning the current one. I'd like to know how they'll justify asking players to fork over more money at a faster rate for an inferior quality product. This pitch is truly going to be a wonder to behold. Now, I can't comment on this subject much further without diving into some pure speculation on my part. I obviously don't have any insider info to help explain the lunacy behind Blizzard's crappy new business model. All I can do is make educated guesses on what I see, but I predict that those of you who think this next expansion will be better than WoD are in for a world of disappointment. I've had a lot of time to think about this, and lately I've been able to do this with a much calmer and cooler head. I almost forgot that I play video games for entertainment purposes. Stepping away from Warlords of Draenor and finding alternative games I actually enjoy really helped alleviate my stress levels. So, naturally I'd assume that this video, and future videos, aren't going to be driven purely by rage alone. Looking back, I think J. Allen Brack was telling the truth when he said Blizzard increased the size of the development team during the tail end of Mists of Pandaria. I also think there's a good chance it did take Blizzard a long time to train that new team properly. WoW is running on some super old and amended in-house technology. I imagine the system looks something like Dr. Frankenstein's worst nightmare. I'm sure all the developers who work at Blizzard needed a substantial amount of time to learn exactly how to work with that beast. That extended downtime was Strike 1 against Warlords. Strike 2 was probably behind-the-scenes technical issues we weren't entirely privy to. The garrison system, for example, was a brand new feature that had to be built from the ground up. We don't know exactly how tough that was to accomplish, and we probably never will. It would actually benefit Blizzard to share this information with the public. Players would be able to sympathize with Blizzard a bit more if they definitively knew how difficult coding a game could be, but it's clear Blizzard has no intentions of communicating with customers beyond the bare minimum, especially where failures are concerned. The garrison system had lots of coding issues that needed to be overcome, in addition to the constant tweaks and adjustments it went through during the course of the expansion's short life cycle. Unfortunately for Blizzard, the garrison feature was pretty much deemed a failure overall, so most of the struggle to build them in the first place basically amounted to a lot of misplaced man-hours. I don't think any players are truly sad that garrisons won't be appearing in future expansions, but think about this. Had they have worked, Blizzard could have carried them over to every expansion going forward. With their new yearly expansion business model, that's quote-unquote new copy and pasted content every year. Blizzard was surely banking on this feature to be a big mainstay of the game. Apex's daily grinds basically worked upon the same concept. It's easier to code an area where players just grind mobs until they fill a bar, versus having to actually code proper quests and proper dailies. If players had embraced Apex's dailies, that definitely would have been the future pillar of PvE content in World of Warcraft. Strike 3 against Warlords was actually a combination of Strikes 1 and 2. Because it took so long to train new employees, and because the garrison feature in particular ate up so many man-hours, a lot of additional planned content was either hastily implemented or outright scrapped. Time spent on the full versions of Bladespire and Karabor was a waste. Time spent on Farallon was a waste. Time spent retooling the Ashran map ad nauseum was a total waste. All of these problems, placed back to back to back, is what caused WoD to be a patchless expansion when you think about it, since 6.1 wasn't a patch at all, and 6.2 only gave us Tanan Jungle, which was a map we were originally scheduled to get at launch. So, what do I think will happen with the next expansion? Well, I don't think it's physically possible for it to be worse than WoD. So if you're planning to continue supporting Blizzard, at least there's that, I guess. You can probably feel confident in knowing the game probably can't get any worse than it is today. Maybe. But most players were so burned with WoD, they're expecting the next expansion to make up for it in spades, and it simply won't. It can't. A lot of players are hyped for the next expansion because they're assuming the Blizzard staff basically ignored WoD for the most part and focused all their efforts on the future. I've already explained though that a lot of time was spent in WoD, just in all the wrong ways. Some players are expecting an announcement on the level of World of Warcraft 2, like an entire departure from the game they're playing today. That's not happening. You're not getting a sequel. Blizzard barely wants to bother working on the original. I'm guessing the next expansion will have a very familiar feel to it. It'll be safe, just more of the same old stuff. Your regular quests, regular dailies, a couple regular raids and dungeons, and before you can really settle into the new content, Blizzard will rush out another expansion. There'll be no motivation to focus on gearing up, unless you're a hardcore raider, because the time it takes to gather gear won't be justified. It'll just be outdated a few months after you acquire it, either trivialized by an upcoming patch or expansion. There'll be no engaging stories or in-depth character development, because that material takes time to write, and Blizzard's 100% focused on sticking to a yearly schedule. Just look at how awful the story and characters were in WoD. In the end, Archimonde was introduced as an afterthought, and Grom became our best friend. Is this a good way to end things? Does it make any sense? No, but who cares? There's no time to refine this stuff. Blizzard has future expansions to sell. Going back to my restaurant analogy from the previous episode, Blizzard doesn't cook quality steak anymore. They serve fast food at best. These expansions aren't meant to be anything special. They're disposable content. In the past, Blizzard announcing a WoW expansion was huge news. Today, it's the equivalent of McDonald's announcing yet another resurrection of the McRib. If I had to guess, I'd say that both WoD and the next expansion were purely designed to be movie tie-ins. WoD had us traveling back in time simply to familiarize the player base with the characters they'd be seeing in the theaters next June, if they choose to buy a ticket. The next expansion will bring players back to Azeroth because that's where the movie takes place. If people see the movie and then decide to play Warcraft because of it, Blizzard wants to ensure the old world looks heavily populated and full of activity. This is probably why the remodeling of Stormwind, which was originally scheduled at the launch of WoD, was pushed back until the next expansion. The original capital cities might be the place where players set their hearthstones to again, Orgrimmar and Stormwind. The big bad villain will probably be Ashara, because she's the last known threat to Azeroth itself. I don't see any of these choices being made because they're good. I see choices being made because they're somewhat symbiotic to the movie. I've heard a few people say that they have high hopes for the next expansion because Blizzard is announcing it at Gamescom. They see it as a panic-stricken move on Blizzard's part, like Blizz just wants to get the hell out of Draenor as fast as possible. Well, they do want to get to the next expansion ASAP. Obviously, they want to reach their hands back into player pockets again. But this announcement wasn't driven by panic. They've clearly said on several occasions that they want to make faster expansions. I just stuck by Blizzard's side because I was hoping they'd never actually follow through on these plans. Faster expansions have always sounded like a bad idea to me, but I wasn't going to cancel my subscription over something they said they someday might do. I only canceled my sub once the yearly cycle was confirmed. The only aspect of this Gamescom announcement I could maybe consider panic would be the fact that WoW's next quarterly sub numbers are due out on August 4th, 2 days before the Gamescom announcement. Right now, Blizzard is the only one who knows how bad those numbers are. The announcement of a future expansion a few days later might be a lame attempt to retain subscribers and appease suits on the business end of things. The numbers look bad now, but we have high hopes for the future. Meanwhile, since I'm on the topic of subscription numbers, I'm disappointed to know the true figures will be ruined by the WoW token. I'd love to know how many players are actually willing to pay for their own subscriptions at this point. I'm gonna be honest, I may not be angry about the breakup between myself and Blizzard anymore, but I'm still quite bitter about the whole ordeal. I was really passionate about World of Warcraft. I loved the game. Now that we're no longer an item, I kinda want to see the game fall apart. It's so immature and stupid, I know. I remember when I was 9 and my parents got divorced, they attacked each other like rabid dogs. And the entire time I kept saying to myself, why don't they just grow up and act like adults? This entire divorce would go so much smoother if they could just part ways peacefully. But my parents harbored a deep resentment toward one another because they were caught up in the moment. They let emotions cloud their judgment. Eventually, though, time healed all wounds, and they did finally go their own separate ways. In the same vein, I'm sure I'll eventually lose the desire to see Warcraft's downfall. But right now, I can't help but hope those subscription numbers are insanely low. The lower the better. It's like a reverse Christmas. The less I see under the tree, the happier I'll be. You didn't dump me, Blizzard. I unsubscribed from you. I'll end today's episode with this. A blue poster recently took to the forums to talk about the upcoming Gamescom announcement. He said, seriously, even though there are people frustrated with aspects of Warlords, or simply just a little worn out from spending so many years playing this game, I hope your curiosity about what we've got cooking is still there. It should be a fun event next week. I trust that many people in this community can check any baggage they might have at the door and earnestly step into this announcement with us. Well, like I said, I'm certainly curious to know what Blizzard is releasing next week, but that curiosity doesn't translate into dollar signs for Blizzard, so they're not going to find any value in it from me. As for the belief that some of the frustration with Warlords stems from the game being old, well, that's just wrong on all accounts. WoD launched with 10 million subscribers. There was clearly an interest to play this game, despite how old it may be. The age of the game didn't turn people away. Unfulfilled hype and underhanded marketing did that. If WoD wasn't designed to be nothing more than a cash grab, if it was built to be a proper expansion, it could have been a renaissance for this game. And then the game truly could have lived another 10 years. Thanks everyone for listening, and I'll talk to you later.